In the quiet corners of ancient philosophy, there exists a profound truth that the Stoics understood better than most. The right question can unlock more wisdom than 1,000 answers. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his private journal that would become the Meditations, didn't fill pages with declarations of certainty. Instead, he questioned himself relentlessly, examining his thoughts, his actions, his very soul. Epictetus, the former slave who became philosophy's greatest teacher, built his entire system around asking what we can and cannot control. Seneca, advisor to emperors, found his deepest insights not in giving counsel, but in questioning his own motives, fears, and desires. These ancient masters knew that questions pierce through the noise of daily existence and reach something deeper within us. They awaken a consciousness that has been dulled by routine, by the endless chatter of a mind that thinks it already knows. Today, in our age of infinite information and instant answers, we have forgotten the transformative power of sitting with a question, of letting it work on us the way water works on stone, slowly but inevitably changing everything. What if I cannot control this situation, but I can control how I respond to it? This question strikes at the very heart of Stoic philosophy, the fundamental distinction between what is up to us and what is not. Epictetus taught that we suffer not from events themselves, but from our judgments about those events. When life presents you with loss, betrayal, or failure, this question shifts your entire perspective. It moves you from the position of victim to the position of conscious actor. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the universe is change, life is opinion. In recognizing what we cannot control, we discover the immense power we have over our own responses, our own character, our own peace of mind. Am I living according to my own values, or am I performing for others? Seneca warned against the trap of living for applause, of measuring our worth by external validation. This question cuts through the layers of social conditioning and asks you to examine whether your choices emerge from your authentic self or from the expectations of others. It challenges the modern obsession with image, with being seen rather than being true. When you ask yourself this question, you begin to notice how much energy you spend on impression management. How much of your life is devoted to a performance that ultimately leaves you empty and disconnected from your true nature? What would I do if I knew I had only 1 year to live? Marcus Aurelius constantly meditated on death, not from morbidity, but from wisdom. Death, he understood, gives life its urgency and meaning. This question strips away the non-essential, revealing what truly matters beneath the accumulated debris of daily concerns. It forces you to confront the reality that your time here is limited and precious. Seneca wrote that we are dying every day, that each moment that passes is a moment we will never reclaim. When you truly internalize this truth, you stop postponing joy, stop delaying important conversations, stop waiting for the perfect moment to begin living fully. Who am I when no one is watching? This question penetrates the gap between public persona and private character. The Stoics believe that virtue must be consistent, that integrity means being the same person in solitude as you are in company. Epictetus taught that our character is revealed not in our grand gestures, but in our unobserved moments, in how we treat those who can do nothing for us, in what we think when we believe no one is listening. This question asks you to examine whether you are building a character worthy of your deepest respect, regardless of who witnesses it. What am I afraid of? And how is this fear limiting my life? Fear, the Stoics understood, is often based on false judgments about what can truly harm us. Seneca wrote extensively about how we suffer more in imagination than reality, how our fears multiply in the darkness of the unknown. This question invites you to examine your fears with the light of reason. It asks whether you are avoiding necessary challenges, important conversations, or meaningful risks because of anxieties that may be largely imaginary. When you face your fears directly, you often discover that they lose much of their power over you. What story am I telling myself about this situation, and is it serving me? The Stoics were masters of reframing, of finding the perspective that empowers rather than diminishes. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly, looking for the virtue in every challenge, the opportunity in every setback. This question recognizes that we are always interpreting our experiences, always creating narratives about what happens to us. It empowers you to become conscious of these stories and to choose ones that strengthen rather than weaken you, that open possibilities rather than close them. How can I use this difficulty to become stronger? This question transforms every obstacle into a teacher, every setback into a curriculum for growth. The Stoics believe that difficulties are not punishments, but training, that the universe provides exactly the challenges we need to develop our character. Epictetus taught that we are like athletes in training, and every hardship is another repetition in the gymnasium of life. When you approach your problems with this question, you stop asking why me and start asking how can this make me better? What would the wisest version of myself do in this situation? This question calls forth your highest potential, asking you to act not from impulse or emotion, but from your deepest wisdom. Seneca emphasized the importance of having philosophical role models, of imagining how a sage would respond to our circumstances. By asking this question, you tap into an inner wisdom that transcends your current emotional state, accessing a perspective that is calm, clear, and principled. It elevates your decision-making from reactive to intentional. Am I trying to change things that are beyond my influence? This question returns you to the fundamental Stoic practice of focusing your energy where it can be effective. So much human suffering comes from fighting against reality, from trying to control other people, circumstances, or outcomes that are simply not up to us. Epictetus taught that when we focus on what we cannot control, we become frustrated and powerless. When we focus on what we can control, our thoughts, choices, and responses, we become invincible. This question helps you redirect your energy toward what actually matters. What legacy am I creating through my daily actions? Marcus Aurelius understood that we are remembered not for our intentions, but for our actions, not for what we meant to do, but for what we actually did. This question asks you to consider the cumulative impact of your choices, the character you are building one decision at a time. It recognizes that legacy is not just what we leave behind after death, but what we create through every interaction, every choice, every moment of our lives. When you ask this question regularly, you begin to live with greater intentionality and purpose. How can I show gratitude for what I already have? The Stoics practiced negative visualization, imagining the loss of what they cherished, not to create anxiety, but to deepen appreciation. This question shifts your focus from what you lack to what you possess, from scarcity to abundance. Seneca wrote that it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor. When you regularly ask yourself this question, you begin to see the extraordinary in the ordinary, the miraculous in the mundane. You realize that you already have access to riches, that no external circumstance can take away. What judgment am I making that is causing me to suffer? Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by things, but by our opinions about things. This question invites you to examine the thoughts and beliefs that create your emotional pain. Often we discover that our suffering comes not from what happened, but from our interpretation of what happened, our expectations about how things should be, our resistance to reality as it is. When you question your judgments, you often find that you can choose thoughts that create peace instead of turmoil, acceptance instead of resistance. How am I contributing to the common good? The Stoics believe that human beings are social creatures designed to work together for the benefit of all. Marcus Aurelius wrote that, "What is not good for the hive cannot be good for the bee." This question asks you to consider how your actions serve not just your own interests, but the larger community of which you are a part. It challenges the modern emphasis on pure individualism, reminding you that your well-being is connected to the well-being of others, that your purpose extends beyond personal satisfaction to include service and contribution. What would I do if I weren't afraid of failure? Fear of failure paralyzes more dreams than actual failure ever could. The Stoics understood that failure is not the opposite of success, but a necessary component of it, that we learn more from our mistakes than our victories. This question asks you to imagine a life where you took appropriate risks, where you pursued meaningful goals regardless of the possibility of failure. It invites you to consider how fear might be preventing you from living fully, from attempting what matters most to you. Who do I need to forgive, including myself? The Stoics taught that holding on to anger and resentment is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. This question recognizes that forgiveness is not something we do for others, but something we do for ourselves. It asks you to examine where you might be carrying the weight of old grievances, old mistakes, old hurts. Marcus Aurelius practiced forgiving others by remembering that we all make mistakes from ignorance, that everyone is doing the best they can with their current level of understanding. This question opens the door to freedom from the past. As you sit with these questions, remember that the Stoics did not seek quick fixes or easy answers. They understood that wisdom emerges slowly, through patient contemplation and honest self-examination. Choose one of these questions, the one that resonates most deeply with your current circumstances, and carry it with you. Ask it in quiet moments, when walking alone, when the day settles into stillness. Let it work on you gradually, the way sunlight works on a growing plant, slowly but persistently creating transformation. The ancient Stoics knew that the unexamined life is not worth living, but they also knew that examination requires courage, patience, and humility. These questions are invitations to know yourself more deeply, to live more deliberately, to respond to life's challenges with wisdom rather than mere reaction. In a world that offers endless distractions from the inner life, these questions call you back to what matters most: the conscious cultivation of character, the deliberate choice of how to live. Your transformation begins not when you find the right answers, but when you begin asking the right questions. The Stoics understood this truth 2,000 years ago, and it remains as relevant today as it was in ancient Rome. In the space between question and answer, in the pause between stimulus and response, lies your freedom, your power, your chance to become who you were meant to be.